All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and we're going to talk about everything that's happened the past few days since I did my last Rico report. We got to talk about this anonymous report that the Washington Commanders may be interested in linebacker Anthony Barr from the Vikings, who you see on the screen right now. We're going to take a look at how good he's been over the years. Is he worth bringing in? We're going to look at the depth chart for the linebacker group. And honestly, is the linebacker group the weakest position group on our team? It may actually be another position group that we need to worry the most about. Also, we got to talk about, I'm gonna update y'all on any other OTA things that have gone down. Of course, we're gonna do a cap space update when talking about Anthony Barr. Also, Jack Del Rio is fine, so we're just gonna talk about that for anybody that doesn't know. And I mean, most notably, how much it was for, Ron Rivera's statement on it, and the fact that Ron Rivera was in Europe when he reprimanded Jack Del Rio and fined him. So we're just gonna talk a little bit about that, but most notably, we got to talk about this stadium situation that has hit a really bad dead end right now. Virginia and DC seem to be out, and PG County, who knows right now. Of course, everybody prefers RFK. Dan Snyder, the fan base, the team, everybody literally prefers RFK. The problem is RFK is not owned by DC, is owned by the federal government, and we're going to break down exactly as to why the Virginia and DC backed out of being potential suitors for a new Washington Commanders stadium. Jack Del Rio's comments didn't help, but to be completely objective, this was something that was stirring up long ago before Jack Del Rio's comments. But we're going to talk about all of that and more. But before we do, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, be on the lookout for all of the content I have coming out. Promise y'all, channel members, I'm getting back to the film sessions real soon. Also, for everybody, not even just channel members, I'm working on my Why We Need to Pay Terry McLaurin video. I'm going to try to look at other receiver contracts related to his and break down how much I think he should get, how much he will get, and all of that. And then of course I'm gonna break down all of the advanced statistics of exactly how amazing he's been since he's been here. And of course that's not even just gonna be his statistics, that's also gonna be statistics of the quarterbacks that's thrown to him and how bad they've been and how much he's been able to produce in spite of all of that. So we're gonna completely break down this Terry McLaurin situation and why he needs to get paid. That's coming up soon, but let's go ahead and talk about this video. Without further ado, let's get it. All right, so starting with Anthony Barr, there has been a recent report saying that the Commanders could be interested in veteran linebacker Anthony Barr. Now, is he a perfect fit? Does the linebacker group truly need him right now? We're going to take a look at Anthony Barr first of all and how he could help our team, and then we're going to take a look at our team to see if we truly even need an Anthony Barr at this point. So starting with Anthony Barr, of course, he's 30 years old, not that old. He was drafted in 2014 in the first round, pick 9 by the Minnesota Vikings. He spent his entire career with the Vikings the past 8 seasons, and he is now a free agent. He was second team All-Pro 2015. He was 4-time Pro Bowler 2015 through 2018. So he had a 4-year span of balling. But since then, it's been kind of up and down, because 2015, his best season, you can argue, the one when he was second team All-Pro, he had a 90 overall grade with Pro Football Focus, with a 73 run defense, but a 90.8 pass rush and an 89.8, basically 90 coverage grade. And that's what we really need right now, a guy that can run, defend, and cover. And Anthony Barr has both. Now, granted, he is better in coverage than run defense, but then as soon as he stopped making the Pro Bowl, it's no coincidence that Pro Football Focus felt like he deserved a 60.6 overall grade in 2019. Arguably his worst season of his career, a 47.5 overall grade in 2020, but he still had a 66.7 coverage grade, which is pretty good, better than anybody on our team last year. And then this most recent season, 2021, he had a 62.9 overall grade, so it was a big bounce back year for him, but his run defense grade was a 54.2 and a coverage grade of 62.9. Now, I think honestly, looking at the film, it wasn't that bad to me. He wasn't his Pro Bowl self per se, but it's safe to say that he would be an upgrade. The problem is, how much money will we be willing to spend on them? Because as of right now, as a cap space update, we're still 7th in the NFL. Our cap changes are plus $245,000. Not exactly sure where that came from, but as of right now, the Commanders are 7th in the NFL with $18,383,938 worth of cap space. That's plenty of money to pay Terry McLaurin and, potentially do something else if you want to. Again, my question about the extension for Terry McLaurin is, if it's an extension, it wouldn't affect this year's cap space anyway. So I'd figure that this $18 million can really be used to building this team this season and doing what you got to do to make this a better team, a playoff contending team this year with Carson Wentz and all of these new weapons on offense and defense. So, I think we can afford Anthony Barr. I feel like we can afford quite a bit of people, even bringing back Landon Collins if you wanted to, but it depends. I don't think you do both. It's either one, bring back Landon Collins hopefully for really cheap, or Anthony Barr hopefully for really cheap. But again, we have $18 million worth of cap space, a little over that. And again, to my point, I think the Terry McLaurin extension wouldn't even affect this year's cap space. And you got to remember, technically, next year's cap space, Carson Wentz is eating up no guaranteed money, so technically he's not affecting the cap at all. We could literally cut him for $0 worth of dead money, so that's plenty of cap space to pay Terry McLaurin $20+ million per year over the next few years. But hey, we'll see how that goes. But I think, honestly, the linebacker position is a really interesting one because going into the offseason, especially going into the draft, I felt like linebacker was the worst group on the defense, arguably one of the worst groups on the entire team. But now, with the way that, I pointed out that we ran 2 linebackers last year, and it may more so be out of necessity and not necessarily what they wanted to do. Now, granted, the entire NFL, most people's base defense now, as of 2022, is nickel defense. They have an extra defensive back somewhere in there, and probably only running 2 linebackers, maybe even just 1. That's like literally the base defense. That's what most people are doing most of the time. But I felt like there was some extent last year of the fact that we were running 2 linebackers because there was never at any point where you could have 3 linebackers on the field and that's your best 11 players. At any point last year, it didn't matter what was going on, stopping the run, whatever, you were better off bringing somebody else in other than having 3 linebackers because our linebacker group just simply wasn't good. Jamin Davis did not look like a 19th overall pick. Cole Holcomb's getting better, but to me, he's still not a true Mike. I think mentally he can handle everything a Mike can handle. I think there's going to be games where he looks like a great Mike this upcoming year if we don't bring in another guy, and then there's going to be games with run heavy offenses where they're going to bring a lot of guards and just offensive linemen in general to come up there and block Cole Holcomb. And then my problem with him, my main problem with Cole Holcomb, is his inability to work through traffic, to engage and disengage with offensive linemen. He's not one of the guys that blows up offensive linemen. He's not one of those guys that stacks and sheds offensive linemen well or consistently. So mentally, I think, he showed us last year he can handle everything as far as Mike linebacker, being the quarterback of the defense, all of the pre-snap stuff. But I am a little worried about run-heavy teams as far as Cole Holcomb being a Mike linebacker. Other than that, I think he's actually pretty straight. He's improved mightily in coverage. But yeah, man, the Anthony Barr situation is weird because honestly, so far in OTAs, we've been running 2 linebackers pretty much all of the time. And then there's always that argument about, should we bring Landon Collins back as your 5th defensive back, technically your 3rd safety that's going to be on the field most of the time anyway? What's the point of having 3 really good linebackers if you're generally only going to play 2 of them most of the time? And Cole Holcomb's good enough that he deserves to be out there majority of the snaps. Apparently through OTA so far, Jamin Davis has improved mightily. I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but based on reports, people are saying that Jamin Davis definitely looks better than at any point that he looked last season. And so then if you add an Anthony Barr, who's going to be the guy that's sitting down most of the time? Granted, Anthony Barr could, of course, be an immediate upgrade over Jamin Davis and maybe even over Cole Holcomb. But you just spent the 19th overall pick over Jamin Davis, and it's going to be really hard for me to even try to sit Cole Holcomb at any point because he was out there playing 100% of snaps a lot of games last year, and he looked really good doing it. And then on top of even trying to add Landon Collins into the starting lineup, if you bring him back, or whoever else you're trying to bring up and develop as a Buffalo nickel, Darrick Forrest making plays in OTAs, maybe Percy Butler, of course Cameron Curl could play that role. Maybe you bring in Gerard Gardner as an undrafted free agent to potentially fill that role. You still have Khalid Hudson out there. There's so many options there just out of the linebackers and safeties. But then you also have Benjamin St-Juste, who as of right now has been looking like our best corner right now. as far as playing in the slot. Like, I mean, whether it be slot, outside, whatever, even though he's primarily been playing in the slot so far in offseason workouts, he's been our best corner. He's been literally the only corner that can cause Jahan Dotson any problems. Everybody else is getting smoked by Jahan Dotson pretty much every play, all of the time, every day. And so Benjamin St-Juste, how are you going to keep him off of the field? I mean, if he's excelling that much in the slot, I think it's really interesting that maybe he's going to technically be your starting nickel. He wouldn't necessarily be your Buffalo nickel, but we'll see, because right now in the starting defense, the best combination of a starting defense that we have secondary wise right now, apparently according to Logan Paulson, is Bobby McCain, Cameron Curl, Benjamin St-Juste, and then of course William Jackson and Kendall Fuller on the outsides. So technically, I mean, there's no room for another player. Technically in that formation, Benjamin St-Juste is your Buffalo nickel in a way, and he's technically your nickel cornerback. He's big for it. You know, normally those guys are small, shifty guys. Like Danny Johnson's like 5'9", Benjamin St-Juste like 6'3", but that's the reason that he's been the only cornerback that's been able to give Jahan Dotson problems. It's the length, it's the patience, it's the short area quickness. Going into this offseason, I was a little nervous about trying Benjamin St-Juste at slot because, I mean, just in college, he barely played slot. I think he ran like 7 snaps his entire collegiate career in the slot. All of the rest of them, like 700 plus, were at outside. And then even when he came here, he didn't look too good in the slot. He looked better outside in last year's offseason workout, so in practices and things like that. So I don't know, man. Apparently he's looking really good there. He's looking really consistent, and if he's going to start as your slot corner, and if you want him on the field a lot, technically there's no room for a Landon Collins or an Anthony Barr, because that spot will technically be taken up by Benjamin St-Juste. Now we still got to see if Benjamin St-Juste can handle the physicality of basically playing the real Buffalo nickel, because right now, coverage wise, apparently he has it locked down, but can he step up in the run game and make tackles, shed blocks from tight ends and things like that? Can he do that? If he can do that, if he can excel at that, he's literally our starting Buffalo nickel, because everything we need he can do at that point if he can also do that. So I think that's really interesting. That's an unsung hero right there. People didn't really expect Benjamin St-Juste to be that Buffalo nickel, but apparently, I mean, if he can handle the physical part of it, if he can handle the run game responsibilities, technically he would be. So I think that's really interesting, because honestly, as of right now, he's our best hope at covering other teams' tight ends, shifty receivers, and the Jahan Dotsons of the world right now. He's literally our best hope of that. I mean, he has the ceiling to be our best corner, and so far in offseason workouts, he looks like our best corner, so I'm glad to have him back healthy. But again, going back to Anthony Barr, where would he play? Are you going to bench Cole Holcomb? Or are you going to bench Jamin Davis, who you just spent the first round pick on? Again, Anthony Barr would clearly be an upgrade over Jamin Davis at this point right now, but who knows? Jamin Davis does have a high ceiling. He's a freak athlete, and again, you just spent the first round pick on him. I mean, we benched them at times last year, and that surprised me, but I doubt they're just going to bring in a starting caliber linebacker and then only run 2 linebackers most of the time, and then you're out there with Anthony Barr and Cole Holcomb, and Jamin Davis is just rotting on the bench. I just don't think they're going to do that. And then the optimism in me, the reports hearing that Jamin Davis is getting better. We'll see. It's OTAs. I got to see it with my own eyes, especially in mandatory mini camps coming up and training camp after that. We'll see. And then also, so far, the best performers in OTAs, according to some people, are of course wide receiver Jahan Dotson and Carson Wentz, the quarterback. But then on defense, you have Benjamin St-Juste and actually 7th round pick Christian Holmes, which takes me to the point as to, like I said in the intro, is linebacker honestly actually our worst position group right now? Because right now, honestly, I'm a little bit more worried about the cornerback position. I was a little bit worried about the defensive line, but apparently Fadarian Mathis is holding it down, and his unselfish play style actually better suits this defense than a Matt Ioannidis and a Tim Settle, who are more so trying to make plays, whereas Fadarian Mathis is more so trying to eat up as much space as possible, eat up double teams, and allow the linebackers to stay clean and allow other defensive linemen to make plays. So ultimately, Fadarian Mathis does look like an upgrade over what we've had at depth. I mean, granted, he's technically supposed to. Tim Settle and Matt Ioannidis were both 5th round picks. Fadarian Mathis was a 2nd round pick. So I would feel like it would be safe to assume that he would be an upgrade over those guys. My problem is I'm worried about the fact that with Daron Payne leaving, is he good enough to be a replacement for Daron Payne? And if he's the starter and taking the place of Daron Payne next to Jonathan Allen, who's on the bench? So that's my problems with Fadarian Mathis. But as far as replacing Tim Settle and Matt Ioannidis, I'm not really worried about that. But But again, I think the cornerback group, that's honestly the scariest group right now. The secondary in general, but really that cornerback group, because William Jackson so far has been struggling in OTAs. I'm a little optimistic about him because what I saw from him the second half of the season last year, where he was literally locking down a third of the field. So, I mean, granted, OTAs are literally set up for the offense to beat the defense. Like, the offensive line is supposed to beat the defensive line. The wide receivers are literally supposed to beat cornerbacks because they're out there basically one-on-one for the most part. No safety help, no physicality, no contact. They can't like jam them at the line and things like that. And that's literally what William Jackson is best at. So I think once we get to training camp and they put on pads and we can actually like really simulate real live game action type of stuff, William Jackson's going to look better. But right now, the fact that he's struggling in OTAs does worry me a little bit. Again, I'm optimistic just based on what I saw from him the second half of the season on film from the 2021 season, this previous season, but still a little worried. And then Kendall Fuller, I mean, I'm just not sure how much I trust him. Pro Football Focus loves him. They feel like he's like a top 3 corner in the NFL, period. They feel like he was a dominant slot corner. They feel like he was also great on the outside. So I don't know. I mean, I am nowhere near that high on Kendall Fuller right now. I really hope he's that good. I just don't see what Pro Football Focus sees right now, but I'm a little worried about him. And then even beyond the starters, like, okay, even best case scenario, William Jackson and Kendall Fuller and Benjamin St-Juste are balling out. Who's the depth behind those guys if there's an injury? I guess your 4th best corner as of right now is Danny Johnson, maybe Corn Yelder. Like, so, I mean, right now the cornerback group is honestly the one I'm most worried about. I thought it was a linebacker group, but with Jamin Davis apparently getting better, Cole Holcomb, he's holding it down. He's only getting better, and we don't want to run 3 linebackers, period, anymore. Like, again, I thought that a lot of the reason that we ran 2 linebackers most of the time last year was because we just couldn't run 3. It just didn't make sense. But I think even if we were to have 3 good linebackers, they want to run a nickel defense and have a Buffalo nickel in there, whether it be Benjamin St-Juste, bring back Landon Collins, somebody. So I think we're only going to have 2 linebackers out there anyway, and as long as we have 2-3 good solid linebackers, I think we're pretty straight. But the cornerback position, again, if there's an injury to Benjamin St-Juste, Kendall Fuller, or William Jackson, I don't know what we do. Honestly, Danny Johnson was pretty good in the slot last year, but outside corner wise, then what? I mean, I get like, say William Jackson gets hurt, your 2 starting corners on the outside, I guess, of Benjamin St-Juste, Kendall Fuller, and Danny Johnson starting in the slot. That's not ideal, but hey, man, it is what it is. Again, that's honestly the position group I'm the most worried about moving forward. We'll see though. And then also just some updates on some quotes from OTAs. First of all, Carson Wentz is super high on Jahan Dotson. He said, quote, "He catches the football as natural as anybody I've been around," unquote. And that's great to hear. I mean, this is Jahan Dotson's rookie OTA session. He's only been on the team for a couple of months now. He's only been in the NFL for a couple of months. So the fact that he's getting compliments like this from Carson Wentz, and the way he said it, I don't think that's just him hyping us up like this is a new team, I need to say positive things. I think he truly means it. And then you have people on Twitter, other analysts that aren't even attached to the Washington Commanders saying, quote, "I'll say this again for my Washington friends. Jahan Dotson is as smooth and as polished as any wide receiver in the draft. He makes everything looks easy. He will make an immediate impact," unquote. And I think that's very noteworthy. That's the reason they drafted him. They didn't necessarily draft him for ceiling, even though I do feel like he has an underrated ceiling. But for the most part, when Terry McLaurin gets back, they wanted a guy that can be the Robin to Terry McLaurin's Batman. We'll see what Curtis Samuel, if he's healthy, what he'll be able to do. And then, of course, De'Ami Brown's development. And, I mean, we have a really interesting receiving group. We have a really interesting tight end group as well. But they wanted a guy that they know for sure. Week 1 regular season, and therefore on going through the regular season, Terry McLaurin has a running mate that can get more than 300 receiving yards in a season. You know, they wanted a guy, if Terry McLaurin's going for 1,100, you got Jahan Dotson that can easily hit 700, 800 if we throw the ball enough. And I think they may have achieved that in Jahan Dotson. And then Hogs Haven said so far the winners of OTAs have been Jahan Dotson, Carson Wentz, Samuel Cosmi, and Benjamin St-Juste. And then he also said the losers have been William Jackson and Percy Butler. I'm really high on Percy Butler. I love the potential, but they even said in rookie mini camps that he was struggling. So we'll see how that goes. As of right now, Percy Butler, I've been hearing that he's been playing more so of like a Buffalo nickel role with occasionally playing like the top deep safety. I think ultimately he's going to be a really good, a better version of Bobby McCain, basically. Like he's going to be that deep single high deepest free safety. Logan Paulson calls it the post safety. And interestingly enough, Darrick Forrest has been balling out in OTA so far. He's had his mistakes, but he's also had some really great highlights. He was the reason that Cole Holcomb was able to get a pick on Carson Wentz at one point a couple of days ago, because he read the play so well in coverage. We know what Darrick Forrest can do in the run game. We know how hard he hits, but the fact that he's improving in coverage, and not even just physically but mentally, and being able to recognize things and trusting his body to be able to make the break on the ball to tip it up for Cole Holcomb to even intercept it, that's a great highlight right there, because there's a lot of things you could take from that as to why he's improving just from that one play. But I think it's really interesting because so far it's reported that Darrick Forrest I thought he was competing more so for the Buffalo nickel, but apparently he's been primarily playing the role of Bobby McCain, like the top safety in practices. Maybe it's just they're trying to see if he can do it, and then when in doubt, so far his most natural position, the Buffalo nickel, he'll probably end up being there either starting or as a backup, but we'll see, man. And then let's go ahead and move on to this Jack Del Rio situation. Again, not gonna really dive into it. I just want to report, and we got to talk about everything, especially when it affects the team. I'm not necessarily giving my opinion on who's right, who's wrong, all of that type of stuff. Y'all should already know how I feel about everything, so we don't even need to dive in all of that. I'm just going to update y'all on what has happened, especially as far as the fine, on what's going on with the stadiums, why it looks like we're not going to end up with a stadium in Virginia or DC, and as to why that's happened. So what has happened, what's going to happen, and why is all of that happening? I'm just giving y'all Rico of Street Scores updates because I feel like everybody needs to be informed. I feel like a smarter fan base is a better fan base, so I'm updating y'all on everything. Jack Del Rio was, of course, fined $100,000. You have the president of the NAACP saying that Del Rio needs to resign or be terminated. His comments have not been more offensive and ignorant. That's coming from Derek Johnson, NAACP president. He also said, quote, "You can't coach a majority black team while turning your back on the black community," unquote. But again, Jack Del Rio not being fired, highly doubt he will. He would have to have an abysmal defensive season. Last year was underwhelming. I've seen people say that, well, technically we had an elite defense 2 years ago, but I think that was more so because of the quarterbacks we played. I think we have the talent. I don't necessarily doubt the talent. I more so doubt Jack Del Rio as far as what our problems have been for the defense, but it kind of goes both ways, because last year we played an elite group of quarterbacks. The year before that, when our defense was elite statistically, we played some of the worst quarterbacks you could play in a season, with a lot of backups, all kinds of just terrible turmoil going on different teams, just struggling. And then so I think this year is kind of like somewhat of a middle, where you're not playing as many elite quarterbacks, but you're also not just playing a bunch of backups, at least presumably right now. We'll see. So Jack Del Rio, this is the real year to see what you actually are. It's a favorable schedule. It's not completely skewed one way or the other where it's too easy or too difficult. It's time to produce with this defense. But going back to the fine, Ron Rivera did fine Jack Del Rio $100,000 for his recent remarks regarding the January 6th insurrection. There's an entire quote on it if you want to go look it up yourself, but I don't want to really dive into reading that. It's quite long, but people everywhere are loving the memo. Washington Commanders fans are happy about how straight to the point it is. He's not beating around the bush. He's making his intentions very clear with the fine and everything. And then you even have people that have no attachment to the Washington Commanders, like Mello, the draft analyst, like Matt Miller's brother, saying a rare W for the Commanders. So everybody loved the statement. Everybody loved the fine. Of course, there's a lot of people like the NAACP president that wants Jack Del Rio fired, but that's just not going to happen. So I'm not even going to get into whether or not he should be, because it's just simply not going to happen again, unless it's not going to be something non-football related. It's going to have to be football. It's going to have to be this defense just underperforms mightily for Jack Del Rio to get up out of here. Or maybe if he goes out there and says something crazy again, maybe that will be the final straw, but I doubt at this point. Even as strong of a personality that he has, I don't even think at this point he's going to do something else to cause commotion, because he's already kind of affected the stadium situation, which we're going to talk about, which I think is overhyped. I don't think we're going to talk about that soon, but basically I think it's really interesting. The main thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that Ron Rivera disciplined Jack Del Rio virtually from Europe. Like right now, Ron Rivera was in Europe, so he had to basically tell him over a face call, Skype or something, that we're fining you need to stop and all of that, and this is why we're fining you and all of this, and we're gonna need you to apologize. And I'm pretty sure Jason Wright probably wrote the apology for him, but all of this was handled virtually. Ron Rivera was not in the DMV area, was not even in America when a lot of this went down. So for people that are possibly wondering, why did it take so long? Why did it take so long for Rivera to address this? Why did it take so long for them to find Jack Del Rio? Why did it take so long for Jack Del Rio to apologize? It's because Ron Rivera was not even there. Of course, he knew about the Twitter comments he had, but as far as like his interview, like after OTAs, I believe Ron Rivera was interviewed before him, so Ron Rivera was like gone and leaving, so he probably heard about the Jack Del Rio, you know, semi-rant and the whole dust-up comments like later on in the day, like probably on the way to the airport or something. So that's where the late reaction comes from Ron Rivera, and that's basically my main point about the fine. Again, I just wanted to update y'all on the fact that he was fined, but the main point to me is right now Jack Del Rio is in France to attend his son's wedding right now. And I think it's funny too, because honestly, that $100K, instead of donating it, Dan Snyder may need to take that and add it to his pay for a stadium fund right now, because he is struggling. But I mean, again, as far as this Jack Del Rio situation, and before we get into the stadium thing, it's hard not to see why people don't consider this team a free agent destination. Like, I mean, first of all, players getting hurt on the field, like our own turf often, Dan Snyder, and we're going to get into a lot of this as far as the stadium stuff goes. But like, this is one of the main reasons Jack Del Rio voicing his opinion the way that he did, and what he said, how he said it, all of that. People wonder why we're not a free agent destination. You see players all around the NFL getting highly upset about what Jack Del Rio said and all of that type of stuff. And so, hey, again, whether you feel that way or not, granted, it is free speech, but it's also a freedom of consequences, my boy. And then let's move on to the stadium. So apparently the Washington Commanders wanted a new stadium, but politicians are basically telling them that their toxic environment will stand in the way of that process. The key Northern Virginia senators say no to the Commander Stadium vote after Jack Del Rio's January 6th comments, and we're gonna dive into why that's more so coincidental than like actually a real thing. Granted, again, I completely disagree with everything Jack Del Rio got going on, but Jack Del Rio is not the reason that we lost Virginia and DC, being completely objective, being completely honest, but we're going to dive into it. The Commanders bill is officially pulled from consideration in Virginia's legislature. They said, quote, it's become clear that there are some issues that need to be resolved. Chap Peterson of the Virginia Assembly said, quote, for some there are systemic issues. I don't believe the team has the type of community backing I would expect from a major pro sports franchise, and then all of the issues with the owner, unquote. Senator McPike said that he met with Jason Wright a couple of weeks ago, and that the two were supposed to meet on January 9th, which is a day after all of this stuff happened. And he said that now that was off, and that he would not attend that meeting. And Senator Jeremy McPike, the one that had a meeting with Jason Wright but canceled it, basically said, quote, no, that was the nail in the coffin, unquote, as far as Jack Del Rio's comments. And basically, we just need to accept that we're not getting the stadium anytime soon at all, because leaving Virginia going to DC, Charles Allen tweeted, today I led a majority of the council in sending a letter to Eleanor Norton thanking and supporting her work to bring the RFK site to the district control. We also spoke unequivocally, we will not support an NFL stadium as part of the future of the RFK's campus. The debate is done. And they're basically just talking about how the Washington Commanders need to address its ownership's many off-the-field failures, in particular its failure to provide a safe working environment for women, and secondarily can return to its former glory on the field. And they dive deep into exactly why they're like, we're no longer doing this on the DC end. If you wanted to read that up, they came out with an official statement, a whole letter and everything. So, I mean, honestly, at this point, it looks like we're just about to end up being FedEx Field 2.0. Going back to the Virginia side, Virginia was supposed to vote soon on whether or not they would bring a new stadium to Virginia. Then it got pushed back a couple of weeks ago, and then after the Jack Del Rio comments, I mean, apparently everybody just came out and said, nah, we're good. Both sides of the fences basically just agreed, we're done, this is over with. So at the very soonest, maybe a year from now, they may vote on it again. I heard something maybe about 6 months from now, but as of right now, it's completely floored. We'll see later. So just backtracking, as of right now, again, it's not Jack Del Rio. Like, I mean, his comments didn't help at all, But right now, basically, Virginia is out because Dan Snyder and all of that. Also, originally they offered $1 billion to fund the new stadium, but then they realized they were literally competing against themselves. DC didn't want to offer money, Maryland didn't want to offer money, so they took it down to like $300 million, and then now they've completely backed out, period. But one of the main reasons they backed out is, first of all, Dan Snyder, of course, but also the traffic and infrastructure. Senator Scott Survell, who tweeted Wednesday that Del Rio's comments will end up postponing the vote, represents the site of the desired location. He said with 140 members, there's no single issue. He said, quote, they need more time to rework the project. They have to deal with a lot of questions, mainly about transportation. They're proposing to locate the project in the worst bottleneck of the East Coast. And if you're going to have a lot of people, you have to have a way to get people in and out. So again, Dan Snyder is a big part of it. Jack Del Rio, I feel like it's not as big as people think. I feel like it's a very tiny part of a reason as to why it's dead in Virginia. But mainly Dan Snyder and, like I just said, traffic and infrastructure. And then as far as DC goes, first of all, to let y'all know, I don't think everybody knows this, but RFK is owned by the federal government, not DC. So that's where a lot of the struggles are coming from. But their main problem with the stadium being in DC, of course, Dan Snyder is a huge part of it. Again, Jack Del Rio is a very tiny part of it. I feel like, again, his role in the stadium plans being killed in DC and Virginia, I feel like that's being overblown. I feel like they're more so just attaching a name to his quote and saying, I oppose this, so it's making them look better in the general light. But I feel like this has been brewing for years. Jack Del Rio's comments, if anything, didn't help, but I don't think it's like the personal nail in the coffin. But other than Dan Snyder, another major reason why DC won't happen is because DC feels like building a new Washington Commanders stadium at RFK or wherever, anywhere close to there, won't make enough money to be worth the hassle, and they don't want to fund it. They feel like they can use the land for something more productive, like a venue that holds concerts and events rather than a football stadium. And then PG County, I mean, we got to worry about whether or not if they decide to pull out. Like, what if they're just looking like, well, Virginia doesn't want it, DC doesn't want it. Maybe we need to look at ourselves and wonder why we want it. So Dan Snyder's playing a dangerous game. As of right now, he really just needs to put all of this on hold and just come back to it later. But yeah, Virginia basically said that they prefer an expansion team at this point. DC doesn't want to use RFK as a football stadium. They prefer to throw concerts and things like that. So we'll see how this goes, man. It's ugly. I mean, Dan Snyder and the losing. I mean, the quote I gave earlier from Virginia. One of the main reasons they don't want to support a stadium, and I feel like DC feels the exact same way, is because we've been losing. Like, how are you going to make money with a losing franchise? You can't fill up stadiums. You want to build a small stadium to make it seem like you can fill up stadiums and have a home field, home crowd advantage. I mean, you're not even bold enough to build a big stadium with a lot of seats because you feel like your team has been so sorry and at best average lately that you feel like other fans are going to run up the stadium, or you're just going to have a bunch of empty seats and that's going to make you look bad. So a lot of it, of course, Virginia, traffic and infrastructure. DC, they feel like it's just better money doing business outside of football, more so concerts and venues. But overall, for every site, Virginia and DC, is Dan Snyder, and it's the lack of winning. That's the other one right there. They just feel like, I mean, is this fan base even passionate enough to make them enough money to where they're happy with the result? You know, it's just so winning, you gotta win on the field. That's a big part of it. Dan Snyder, of course, is also a huge part of it. And then again, for DC, different reasons from Virginia. Same thing, Virginia, slightly different reasons from DC. But overall, the Dan Snyder and the lack of winning and the lack of fan base are the strongest reasons as to why the stadium plans are dead right now. So we'll see, because I mean, as of right now, it's looking like the leading candidate is just rebuilding the stadium next to FedEx Field. And also, I mean, I just think it's kind of ugly because the Washington Commanders put themselves in a corner. Just 4 months ago, they said, quote, we will be in a new venue 2027, and they were talking about basically how they planned on getting it in Virginia, which put themselves in a corner. I mean, they went out and said, we're leaving Maryland, and you're putting that statement out like, yeah, we don't need you, Maryland. And then now, right now, they clearly only have Maryland, so they clearly need Maryland. So I mean, they definitely put themselves in the corner right there. And I mean, I think Disco had a good point on Twitter. He said, I can appreciate the stances that Virginia and the district have taken against doing business with Dan Snyder. And of course, going from his tweet, Jack Del Rio, his comments and everything, going back to his tweet. But don't break your arm patting yourselves on the back. You do plenty of business with shady characters. Again, I think it's one of those things where it's kind of like it's trendy to go against Dan Snyder and Jack Del Rio. They're kind of using them as an example to separate themselves, even if they do believe a lot of the same things both of those guys do, even if they literally do a lot of things that Dan Snyder does. But as of right now, it's too hot to support them, even if you do, publicly at least. So as of right now, even people that completely agree with Dan Snyder and Jack Del Rio's ways of living are even like out, like, man, y'all are too hot right now. We can't support y'all. We can't publicly support y'all. We got to separate ourselves from y'all. So they're kind of making those guys examples. So I agree with Disco. I don't think they're doing this out of the kindness of their heart. Right now, it's just all about money. And again, just to revisit Del Rio, I think overall his comments didn't help the situation, of course, but it's not the end all be all and the main catalyst as to why these stadium things just got super killed. Again, I just think they wanted a quote and a name to attach to the reasoning as to why it's dead. I think this was just basically an opportunity for all of those senators and government people of power to basically jump on it and be like, hey, I'm against this, support me for the next election, all of that type of stuff. So it's all money in politics when it comes to that type of stuff. But really, I mean, at this point, Dan Snyder, it seems like it's more you than anything else. Again, winning is affected by it, but also, I mean, you could say winning is affected by the fact that Dan Snyder is the owner and players, really good quality players, don't want to come play for Dan Snyder. So that also does affect the winning, especially free agency wise. But again, it's the lack of winning. It's for various reasons, but it seems like the number one reason right now is Dan Snyder and everything he got going on. He's hot. I mean, he's literally under congressional investigation. Like, he's really hot right now. So at this point, I mean, Maryland, DC, Virginia may just corner Dan Snyder to the point that he has to sell the team because he won't be able to get a new stadium in either of those places. And I guess one good news for Dan Snyder is the fact that the Denver Broncos team sold for as much as it did. It sold for more than people expected. That means the price probably went up for the Washington Commanders as well. So if Dan Snyder wants to sell the team, if he ends up selling the team, he'll probably end up making more money than he even thought he would originally. So we'll see. And I think it's really sad too, because all of this is going on while on paper it looks like we may have one of the better teams we've had in a long time. I mean, we'll see how well Carson Wentz plays. We'll see about this cornerback depth and a lot of various issues. Is Terry McLaurin going to be back for training camp? Deron Payne situation, all of that type of stuff. Are we bringing back Landon Collins? I mean, there's a lot of things as far as talent and coaching goes, but honestly, you can definitely argue that this is one of the better potential teams we've had in a while. And so the fact that all of this is going on around that kind of sucks because it overshadows what we're trying to do on the field. It looks like we're finally building a team that can win. But where are we going to win at? What stadium? What state? What city? That's the struggle right now, man. It's ugly. And apparently, I mean, right as I'm about to end this recording, apparently Jack Del Rio's Twitter got deleted. I honestly don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's a glitch or something, but people are talking about it right now. I mean, it's really inconsequential. So, I mean, I just wanted to tell y'all that, but I'm not going to dive into it because, I mean, it's whatever for me. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section, let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Of course, get in the comment section, let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video, especially the Anthony Barr stuff, because as far as the stadium stuff and the Jack Del Rio stuff, I just wanted to update y'all on everything there, update y'all on what's happening and why it's happening. But as far as Anthony Barr, definitely get in the comment section, let me know how you feel about the potential of signing him. And also, is the linebacker group still the position group we're the most worried about, or is it really the cornerback group, specifically cornerback depth? Or even the starters, William Jackson and Kendall Fuller, getting burnt by a 2-month rookie in Jahan Dotson right now, who a lot of people felt like was a reach at 19th overall. So definitely get in the comment section, let me know how you feel about that. And as far as the discussion of who are the winners and losers of OTAs, because again, we're done with OTAs, we're moving to mandatory minicamps next week. So it's going to be interesting to see if Deron Payne finally participates in team drills, if Terry McLaurin finally shows up, because it is technically mandatory. We'll see, man. But yeah, man, I appreciate all of the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors, whose name you see scrolling on the screen right now, man. I really appreciate y'all. I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.